Hi there, and welcome to another of these short videos to help you reach your own highest potential. My name's Jeremy Harbinson. I'm author of the book Personal Effectiveness, and for over 35 years I've been acting as a trusted advisor to business leaders of many organizations. Now, an interesting question is, how can you get 80% from 20%? And that applies from something which is called the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. Now, you've probably heard of this, but you may not have understood how powerful this principle is and how you can really apply it to your own life and your own business to get far more dramatic results. The 80-20 principle simply says that in any kind of distribution or economic distribution, probably 80% of the results are coming from just 20% of the inputs. So it's like 80% of the harvest is coming from 20% of the seeds. It was first observed by an Italian economist called Pareto back in the late 1800s. And he was studying wealth distribution in Italy. And he noticed that about 80% of all the wealth in Italy was actually owned by only 20% of the population. And in lots and lots of studies since then, that is what they have tended to find. It's not just in terms of wealth distribution, it applies to nearly every economic distribution. So, for example, when I go into a client's business and we start to analyze their sales, you generally find that something like 80% of the sales comes from something like 20% of the customers. Doesn't have to be exactly 80 to 20. It's just this principle that there's the very important few and then there are the others. Doesn't mean they have no importance, but they're just of much less importance than the key 20%. You will find it in all sorts of things. You'll find it, for example, I usually ask people, if you take all your staff, I bet you'll find that 80% of your hassles come from just 20% of the staff. If you get customer complaints, then I think you'll probably find that 80% of your complaints are coming from just 20% of the customers. But you can apply this principle very powerfully. For example, take a company like Microsoft. It's continually developing software and programs. And when they initially develop any type of software, there are always bugs in the software and they cause the software to crash. Now, it would be a very expensive process to fix every single bug. But what they have learned to do is list down the crashes and list down the bugs that cause them, and then sort those. And what they tend to find is that 80% of all the crashes are coming from just 20% of the bugs. And so they devote themselves to fixing and eliminating those 20% of the bugs. And what they find is that the software crashes 80% less. And usually that's enough to be able to get the software released. And it's much less expensive than trying to fix everything. Could you apply this in your business? Maybe there's some area where you're trying to improve performance. Rather than trying to identify and fix every single problem and cause, maybe what you can do is simply list them down, prioritize them, and I bet that you'll start to find that 80% of the problems are coming from just 20% of the causes, and those are the ones to focus on. Just to help you see the power of this, let's imagine a business which is selling £1 million worth of sales per year, and it's doing that through 10 salespeople. Now, what the Pareto principle predicts is that 80% of those sales will be made by just 20% of the workforce. So in other words, £800,000 worth of sales will be coming from just 2 of the salespeople. Now, that doesn't maybe surprise you all that much, but when you break the numbers down, here is what you'll find. If 2 of those salesmen are selling 80% of the sales, that's 2 of them are selling 800,000 or an average of 400,000 each, whereas the other 8 between them are only selling £200,000. That's £25,000 each. And you can see that the difference between the top salespeople and the rest is not a few percent, is a difference of 16 times. That's staggering, isn't it, in terms of effectiveness? Now people say, well, what do? Do you sack 8 salespeople? No. What you might do is start to look at exactly what the salespeople are doing. Let's say their job involves putting together lists of prospects, then phoning up those prospects, then going out and seeing them, having the sales meeting. If they get the order, writing up the order, coming back and processing and getting it delivered. But you might find that 80% of what gets the result is happening in only 20% of those items. Probably it's the bit where the star salespeople are face to face with the customer. So what you might do is reorganize this sales team and get some of the bottom 8 actually working on developing the prospect list, doing the phoning up to getting appointments. Maybe they do the research on the customer, and then they drive the star salesperson out to meet the client, where the star salesperson is looking at the research. And then they go in together to see the customer, and the star salesperson gets the sale. Whereupon the assistant then writes up the order, processes the order, does all the administration, and the star salesperson can go straight into the next meeting. It's just something to get your imagination working about how you might start applying the 80-20 to your business. And let me emphasize that these figures of 80 and 20, first thing is that it may not be 80-20. In some things that I've looked at, it might be 75-25, it might be 65-35. But in other areas, you actually find it's 95 to 5%. And the other thing is, it's only a principle. They don't even have to add up to 100. So you might find that 15% represents 75%. So it's just a principle that there's the really important ones and there are the others. The other thing is that it's what is called fractal. So if you've managed to identify, say, the top 20% of your customers who are producing, say, 80% of your sales, then what you will tend to find is that if you take that top 20% of the customers, you will find that the top 20% of them, 20% of 20% is 4% of the total, will account for 80% of the 80%, which is 64%. Trust me, I'm an accountant. And similarly, you can take it to another fractal, which will suggest that approximately 4%, or sorry, 20% of that top 4%, which is about 1%, will equate to something like 51% of the total. Now, without getting too hung up on these numbers, I just want you to notice that people tend to think of things in terms of averages, and averages don't always really help us. For example, a rather ridiculous average is that if you think about the entire population of the world, on average, all human beings have one testicle. But actually, how many people does that describe, and is it helpful? No. It's far more important to know who the top 20% are, what the top 20% causes are, etc. You can apply this sort of thing as well in your time management and getting the most out of your time, because you need to stand back and think, what are the top 20% activities that I do? What are the 20% of what I do which are actually creating 80% of the results? Often that takes quite a bit of time to tease out and explore, but it can be really, really important. And I go into that in much more detail on some of the other videos in this series. But these sort of things, to tease out how to apply them to your business, it's great if we can interact together. And one of the ways that I do that is by the Reach For It online mentoring groups. I can mentor you directly as part of a group. And what I do is I share key insights and powerful tips. Then we get a discussion going in the group about how we might apply those in other people's experience. You can ask me questions and we can interact together. And one of the great things is that I like to give people the chance to experience this completely free of charge, so as they can see whether the group would work for them before they have to pay anything. On the website in the box below, you can get details about the Reach For It group, and you can find out how to apply for your free session. So I hope that we might meet on that. If not, I look forward to seeing you on another of these videos.